Hey everyone, this is Vic, otherwise known as Facade. I am coming to you with another tutorial. This one's going to be focusing on how to make an iris, and not just an iris, but um, how to mask the outer edge of the iris so you can do something like this here. Let me just show you. For instance, this is a custom control I built for this iris, but as you can see as we open it, the blades themselves start to become masked out in the outer edges, so we can do something cool like using this circular border, and those blades do not cross that outer edge. So really neat. I'll show you how to do that. Again, this may come in handy, but if you put this iris against a wall, for instance right here, you probably don't need to do this kind of masking because the wall will conceal the blades. But let's say maybe there's a tube that extends behind this border, maybe a few feet or yards in, meters, then that might come in handy because you don't want to have these blades pop out of this border here. So yeah, so let's see how this works, and hopefully you'll learn a few things. So let's start a new project and a new scene. So I'm not gonna use shortcuts. I'm just gonna kind of go through these menus manually. That way you don't miss out on anything. So yeah, let's go ahead and start here. So what we're gonna do first is go into the front view, and we are going to build the actual blade. So I'm going to do that by using a B-spline. I'm just going to create this really quick here. It doesn't have to be perfect. So here's the blade. Simple and simple. Alright, that's good enough for me. So let's go back to the perspective view. And we need to give this spline a surface. So the way we're going to do that is by using the extrude NURBS object. And we're going to drag the spline inside the extrude NURBS. And as you can see now, that has a surface, and that's also been extruded out 20 centimeters by default. If we select that, you'll see that that's extruded out in the Z by 20 centimeters. Okay, so I'm going to go display quick shading lines, so that way we get to see the lines here. And let's rename this. Let's name this to blade. Okay, so now we need to duplicate this blade around to create the iris itself. We're going to do that by using the cloner. So we're going to go up here to MoGraph, go to cloner, and then drag your blade inside the cloner, and that's going to duplicate linearly in the Y. By default, we need to change that. Select your cloner and go to mode, go from linear to radial. And now we're starting to see what we want. Okay, so we need to increase the radius of this to roughly around, I'm going to say about 1,000 or so. Let's go all the way, because we want these blades to rotate, and we want the tip of the outer blade to meet here in the center and all of them. That way they create that closed iris. Okay, so let's increase the count. Let's go back to 10 perhaps, and then go into, make sure you're under cloner still, go under transform, and then we're going to focus on rotate B, which is banking. And let's turn these in and see what we get. Okay, so as you can see, we're starting to get what we want, but when we close the iris up, we want to make sure the inner part, they're all touching in the middle, and right now they're not. So we need to go back to the object part and decrease the radius a bit until you start to see them close, which is about that. That's a sweet spot right there. So we're at about 824 centimeters in the radius. This is going to differ in your scene because you probably built the blade, maybe perhaps you built it a little taller than I did. So just mess with the radius and until you get that sweet spot where this is closed. So now let's go back to the transform of the cloner and let's see what happens. Alright, we open it up. We're starting to get that iris working. It's working nice. Alright, now one other thing is that this iris right now, the blades are all in the same plane as you can see, so we need to kind of just tweak it a little bit so they're kind of not all on the same plane. So we're going to dial up this rotate heading just a bit. As you can see, they're kind of angled now, and now that looks a little better. Let's try a little more. There we go. So now they're not on the same plane, which that looks a little more realistic. So now let's open it again. Yep, that's what we want. Okay. So these numbers are important here for the banking, for the rotate B, because we're going to use these numbers to create a custom control that'll open up the iris, which will make it a lot easier for us to control instead of coming in here into the cloner and messing with us in here. Okay, so the sweet spot for the close here is -165, and the sweet spot for fully dilation here is -120. Let's say 120, and that's fully dilated. All right, so good, we're getting there. All right, so the next step is to create a mask that's going to mask out the outer part of the blades. That way when you fully open this up, these will be masked out and you won't see any of this. Okay, so let's put this back to -120, and let's go ahead and create a tube, and let's rotate that tube to be on the same plane as the iris. Alright, so now let's scale this tube up a bit. There's a few controls here you can see in the viewport. You can either do this manually the way I'm going to show you, or you can actually go into the tube and do this using the controls here in the attribute editor manager. I'm going to just go in here, select the middle point and scale that out, or move that out. That's going to scale the outer radius, and keep going on this until we're a little kind of scaled it out a bit. And now we want to scale the inner radius out to where the where you start seeing the blades, the inner part of the blades. Okay, you want to kind of bring that in until you fully get rid of those blades there, because that's where the iris is fully dilated. Alright, so once we have that, this is where we create our little mask using a Boolean. So we're going to go here under this little icon and go to Bool, and then grab both your cloner and your tube and drag them into the bowl. Alright, and I believe you want to have the cloner. Let me rename the cloner, by the way. Let's call this iris cloner. We're going to put the cloner on top of the tube. Alright, let's try that again. Cloner on top of the tube. And now you're going to start seeing, let's see here. Let me move this. You start seeing the blades. Let's see that one more time. Under the bowl, make sure high quality is unchecked. Alright, because that's kind of, that'll mess with your viewport, the way it looks with the OpenGL and stuff. So just uncheck that. Let's see here. So let's go to bool. Let's go to, that's not it. I think it's, oh, I know what's going on. I believe this tube that we made, uncheck the bool. Yep, that's what it is. This tube here is not thick enough, so we're gonna increase the height of this. Do it here as well. And now it's capturing all. This was what was happening before. As you can see, the blades are sticking out from the back. So we have to increase the height, and now it encompasses the entire iris. So let's turn that bowl back on. Now you'll see that it is now masked. So let's go down here to the cloner and see if we can close this up. There we go. And that's working. So as you can see now, those blades get masked as they get fully dilated. And that's exactly what we want. Alright, perfect. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm going to close that up here, and I'm going to make another tube. I'm going to rotate that 90 degrees again. And I'm going to scale that up. I'm going to do it on the side now here in the attribute manager. So outer radius, I'm going to bring that right to where that edge is for those blades for the iris, and bring that inner radius up. And this is going to be our border. Alright, and now we can go in here and go under fillet for the tube, and let's just smooth this out a little bit. Let's add some more rotation segments, and then a couple of segments for the fillet. Now we have a nice looking iris. Let's change this from wireframe under display to isoparm, and that gives us a cleaner view of what's going on here. So let's go back to the iris cloner, and let's just make sure that this is working. And it is. As you can see, the masking from that Boolean is working. And that's exactly what we want. Alright, so the last thing we're going to do is create the control, the custom control using Expresso to open this iris up. Okay, so let's create move this to the side here, and create a null, and that null is under, I believe they changed it in this version. I have it up here, but it's under this one icon here for the cube. It's right here, the null, if you don't have it up here. That's going to create a null. So grab all your objects and drag them inside the null. Call the null iris. Alright. Right click on the iris and go to Cinema, 4D tags, go all the way down to Expresso. And that brings up your Expresso editor. So let's leave that here on the side. So click on your iris and go down to user data, add user data, and we're going to create the iris control. Let's call that iris control. Go down to interface. We're going to create a float slider, and we're going to leave everything else at default. What's important is that the units right now we're using for this control is percent. So we have 0 to 100%. That's going to be important here in a second. Okay. So now that we have that user data created, drag your iris control into your Expresso editor, and then left click on this red little section here, and let me move this up. Left click, go down to user data, and so here's your control that we just created. And now we want to bring in the blades themselves, the iris, into the Expresso editor. That way we can control that opening and closing. So let's go inside the iris, go down to the iris cloner, and what we want from the iris cloner is a transform. Okay, transform, rotate B. So let's go ahead and bring in the iris cloner in here. Just drag and drop them into the Expresso editor, and we're going to left click. Let me bring this back up a little bit. Left click, go down to transform, and go down to rotate R here to rotate B. Okay, so that's going to be the key for rotating the iris itself. Alright, so the one thing we need, if we look into inside the iris cloner, the transform itself, remember I said the iris control, we have this set to, let's go back up here, to percentage. So we have the iris cloner, the rotate B is set to degrees. So we need to figure out a way to convert percent to degrees. So the way to do that is by using the range mapper node. Right click in an empty spot in your Expresso editor. Go up to new node Expresso calculate down to range mapper. Okay, so click on your range mapper, and that's going to bring up your range mapper settings here. So the input range of the iris, okay, that's your input. We want that to be percent, because that's what we have from 0 to 100%. The output range, what's being spit out from the iris cloner, is degrees. So sorry, let's click on the range mapper again. Is degrees. So output range will be degrees. Now go down to your parameters, and our input lower and input upper, these are correct. Remember, it's 0 to 100% for the iris control. And now the output lower and the output upper, those are the degrees that we have set for the iris cloner. As I recall, let's just do this one more time. Fully closed is, set this as about 170, I believe I said. Yep, 170 is fully closed, and fully open was minus 120. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to go back in here to the range mapper, set fully open to minus 120 degrees, and set fully closed to minus 170. Okay, and now connect the iris control into the input of the range mapper, and the output of the range mapper into the input of the rotate B of the iris cloner. And those are all connected. And now let's test this out and see how it works. I'm going to minimize this here. Click on your iris control, and as you can see, that is working very nicely, as it should be. Alright, so now we can go here and just make a quick keyframe, frame 0. Let's keyframe by control clicking this little icon here. Let's go down to about 40 frames, and let's set that to 100%. And now, as you can see, we can just scrub through the timeline, and this is working as it should. Okay. Yeah, so that's pretty much how to build the iris. Let's move this tube back a bit just to cover that part. Let's see here. There we go. All right. The final thing I just wanted to quickly do is show you how to build a quick wall for this. So like I said, perhaps you want to have a cylinder. Let's take the caps off the cylinder, and let's scale this up a bit and rotate it. Oops, on the Y. Scale it up some more. I want it to be around there. Alright, this is going to be the entrance to our portal. Let's bring this out a little more. Alright, there we go. So that tube obviously already has a hole for that fits perfectly with our iris. But what if we want to put a wall behind that? How do we make a hole in that wall rather quickly and easily? So we're going to do that by creating a rectangle. And I went under your curves for that, under this little icon here. Select your rectangle. I'm going to scale the rectangle up. And we're going to pretend that this is a wall. Alright, I'm going to bring this, before I do anything else, I'm going to create a circle curve as well. Scale that up a bit. let's see here. Let's scale it to where it also meets that edge of that iris, somewhere around there. I select both the rectangle and the circle and move them. Sorry for that. Move them back to the end of that cylinder. Let's see. I'm going to scale the rectangle up a bit more, just to make a bigger wall. And now we're going to use a spline mask and drag and drop the circle and the rectangle inside the spline mask. Alright, nothing had happened, as you can see, is there's still just two curves. So we need to create an extrude NURBS and then drag and drop that spline mask inside the extrude NURBS. So it's this little hierarchy that has a circle, rectangle inside the spline mask, and then you put the spline mask inside the extrude NURBS, and that creates your surface. Okay, and now we go into the spline mask and just select, let's see, which one is it? There you go, B subtract A. So basically B subtracts A. The rectangle subtracts the circle, and you get a hole in the wall. Okay, so that's kind of a quick tip on how to make a quick wall. Perhaps that'll be useful. Anyway, that pretty much sums it up. I know this is kind of a long tutorial, but I hope you learned a few things, and yeah, I hope you can apply those to your project. In the meantime, please visit my website, which is humanelement.com, and that's spelled H-U-E, not H-U, Human Element. And here you find some more tutorials, and also you'll find some VideoHive templates that I've created and are for sale on VideoHive that may help you with your projects. Please feel free to just look in here and see what you find. So thanks a lot again. This is Vic, otherwise known as Facade, and have a good one. Bye.